competitive game is make it a night game. That would have been
Yeah,
the one thing that would have helped and sort of said maybe BYU has a little bit of a home edge. But I tell you what, it's going to be one of the loudest stadiums you've ever played in,
oh
and
man.
communication is going to be extremely difficult, especially in that
Hmm.
south end zone. So watch for that during the game. And then the other thing is the BYU. While we tip the hat, and it's all respect, I hope
Sure.
your opinion about BYU has not gone down. In fact, I hope that
Not at all.
your opinion by the end of the year will have said, "Man, BYU is going to be a fantastic member of this league," like you've said many, many times.
Oh yeah,
Um, that's a
I think
win.
that they are very quickly going to be one of those flag bearer programs. Let's go! Welcome back to Hall of Fame College Football. I'm your host, Jason Watkins. And if you love college football, you're definitely in the right place. So before you forget, smash that red subscriber button, like our videos, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you don't miss one moment of Hall of Fame college football. Folks, we are going to right away bring in Nathan Bomber Brown from the Big 12 Mafia, good friend of the program. Welcome to the show, Nathan.
Thanks for the invite, Jason. It's great to be here. It's a Friday and it's nap time for me, so I'm ready, locked and loaded. Let's go.
Hey man, I like this idea of Friday nap time. I mean, I was just thinking that whenever you said that precast, so I like it. Uh, Obviously, Oklahoma coming in this weekend. This is a important game for our Sooners, Nathan, and going up against the program that they've never been able to beat, just in 2 times of playing them. But to go into Provo and have an opportunity to beat this team, I know that BYU has fallen on some tough times here in the latter half of this season, but how excited is that fan base there in Provo about being able to host a blue blood team like Oklahoma?
I will tell you right now, it is amazing, right? So in BYU, let's talk Mountain West time zone, which
Okay.
you and I both share right now.
Yes.
BYU, it's 10 in the morning when we're going
Yeah.
to be playing this football game. So I think all these players are going to be feeling like they were back playing Pee Wee football when the parents were cheering from the sidelines, and it was those 9 and 10 a.m. games that we
Yeah. Yeah.
always enjoyed at the time. So what's interesting is you'd think that that would be maybe a reason not to go to the game, right?
Sure.
People would say, "I'll just sleep in, stay in my pajamas. It's cold
Unless you know
outside."
BYU sports, you know.
And now you know, last
Yeah.
night they got over 5,000 people watching the women's soccer team, and it was
Wow.
cold. It finished in the high 30s last night playing
Wow.
soccer, and they've led the nation in attendance in soccer. And this is November. Well, now we're
Wow.
talking football, and it's a sellout, and it could potentially be an all-timer. We could be talking
Wow.
64, 65,000 with some in standing room only. So it isn't a small thing. BYU's 5-5. Yeah, it's been a struggle, but the smart people, including myself, I'm a smart guy, knew that the depth issues were going to be a problem for this team, and it's going to take a few years to get that all. We need instead of a 2 deep, we need a 3 deep and a 4 deep like
Sure.
Oklahoma has. So couldn't be more excited. I'm going to be there. I'm taking my dad for his birthday, so I'm expecting a great show, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
That's awesome, man. I'm excited for you on that end of it. I was telling you precast, I was really hoping that I was going to be able to get out there. I wasn't able to get
Right.
away, but I tell you, this is a game that I've kind of had circled on the calendar before the season and all the way through it. Is just because this is a program that and honestly, and I've talked to you a lot about this too, is Coach Sitake has been super impressive to me. I think that when it comes to coaches that you respect around the country that aren't your coach or whatever. This is one of those guys that you're always going to have to say that about. Kalani Sitake's done a great job. Big 12 media days, he impressed both the coach and myself tremendously. Not that we didn't already respect him before that, but we just thought the way that he came across as a new member of the league and a grateful member of the league. And I think that BYU really showed that of themselves during Big 12 Media Days. I thought that was great for them. But I
Well,
do think that I
sorry, go
think
ahead.
that he kind of knew, it seemed like, that there was going to be some up and down times this first season. But I think that if this is the one game out of the newbies that Oklahoma's played, and I probably didn't give UCF enough credit, but this is the one that I've been worried about. If we're going to lose one of these games, it's going to be this one, because these guys, even if they're not playing very good, they're going to be able to get up for a game as well as anybody can, because they've done this. They've played this level of program before. They've played Oklahoma and beaten them before. They've never lost to them. They've beaten Texas. I've seen them beat Texas. This is that program that, and this coach is that, that he can come up with a game plan to win one,
Well, and I tell you what, you and I spoke about this, I think, right after the season was announced and the schedules were put out for each school. You and I
Yeah.
talked about this, I think, shortly right after that. And I agree with you. I regardless of whatever BYU's record was going to be going into this game, I think 5-5, most BYU fans would be, in fact, the smart ones would be, man, we're happy we're 5-5. That's great. Our first year in this new conference. But you and I both spoke about the bushwhacking that can happen in Provo in November. The only other thing that they could have done to tip it towards BYU for a competitive game is make it a night game. That would have been
Yeah.
the one thing that would have helped and sort of said maybe BYU has a little bit of a home edge. But I tell you what, it's going to be one of the loudest stadiums you've ever played in,
Oh,
and
man.
communication is going to be extremely difficult, especially in
Mhm.
that south end zone. So watch for that during the game. And then the other thing is the BYU, while we tip the hat and it's all respect, I hope
Sure.
your opinion about BYU has not gone down. In fact, I hope that
Not at all.
your opinion by the end of the year will have said, man, BYU is going to be a fantastic member of this league, like you've said many, many times.
Oh, yeah. I think
That's a win.
that they are very quickly going to be one of those flag bearer programs.
Good.
I
I
don't think
appreciate
they've
that.
always been that in every conference that they've been in. I know that
Right.
you've been independent for the last 5 or 6 years anywhere, or maybe 10.
It's 12,
However,
and it was a
12.
long
Oh, okay.
time.
Yeah, but I remember them as growing up for part of most of my life in New Mexico, in southeastern New
Right.
Mexico, and being New Mexico State and UNM. Now UNM was always in the league with Utah and BYU
Right.
in the WAC, and then the Mountain West after that. And I just you remember some of those. I mean, with basketball especially, that would be when UNM was really going to battle with them. But football,
Right,
they
of
always
course.
dominated the WAC and the Mountain West pretty much.
Yeah,
Um,
and I want to make sure everybody who's watching understands. I'm trying to clean up some of this disinformation that people have been carrying around for years. The first thing is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints gives no money to any of the athletics, but certainly basketball
oh
and
yeah,
football. So if people think that BYU is getting recruiting by the church subsidizing any of those programs, it's absolutely false. And anybody who's saying that is actually against the church, frankly. The
there's a
second
lot of
thing is
disinformation out there, and there sometimes. Wow.
right. The other thing is that we have return missionaries coming back that are gone for 2 years that come back and are immediately in fighting strength and ready to play. We have older players. Yeah, there are a considerable amount of married, have children, but
Sure.
what they don't have is they for 2 years they did no conditioning, no football work at all. So
Oh yeah.
it's like taking a 2-year vacation, riding on a cruise ship, coming back and somebody handing you a helmet and saying, "Okay, go out and tackle that guy." It takes a long time to get reintegrated.
Some
I
of
would
those
say
missions are in third world countries, aren't they? That they're not.
most are in third world countries. No running water and
Right. Yeah.
bathroom
It's not
facilities.
not not
So
conducive for nutrition or
I'm doing
for
my
being able
job.
to.
I'm
Yeah.
doing my job trying to break all those, those misinformations out there. That's not the right way to use that word, but you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Sure. Sure. No. And I having covered the league, I covered the Mountain West for a time for
Oh,
UNM.
okay.
in Albuquerque, and then I had covered the Big 12. You knew that before that, covering Texas Tech
Right.
basketball and football as well. But and then just growing up in the area and always knowing about BYU. And when I moved to Las Vegas, BYU was still in the Mountain West, and I think that was what Jimmer Fredette's last couple of years there at BYU in
2009,
basketball. Yeah,
2010.
that's when
Yeah.
I moved to Vegas. So,
Yeah.
So I got to see the back end of them being in the Mountain West as well. I was
Right.
kind of surprised when they went independent. We don't have to talk all about that, but this just a program that you expect them to always handle it. They're always going to show up and fight, no
Right.
matter what the season may look like for them. And I think that, as I said, we probably could have seen this coming, that they would have a stumble time. But
Oh,
I
sure.
don't. I anybody who thinks that they're not going to step up and give any kind of competitive be competitive over these next 2 weeks, I think it'd be crazy. You have an opportunity to get bowl eligible.
Yes.
I would think that they're going to give it about all they can to get bowl eligible their first season in the Big 12. And let's talk a little bit about them. Looking at that, you tell me, what is in your mind the biggest strength on this football team right now, defensively, offensively? What is it for you?
Man, our wide receivers are fantastic. If they can get the ball in their hands, Darius Lassiter has had some of the most amazing one-handed catches you will
Unbelievable.
ever see. I'm talking
Mhm.
college, high school, and the pros. So the receivers have been a very, very strong part of the team. I would also say on the offense that the running backs, if they can get the room or they can get the ball in their hands on throws, again, on a quick slant from a wide receiver or a flare, a screen pass, even as long as they're moving forward, the running backs have been great. LJ Martin and Aiden have been fantastic. And, it's going to be one of those things where it comes down to the strongest things rely on the quarterback. On the
Right.
offensive side, everything rotates around him. And the weakest point, I know most BYU people don't want to talk about this, but the offensive line, which is normally a top 20 every year, perennial favorite and strength of the team this year, has one guy, Sua Matea, that
Mhm.
is going to be a high first round draft pick next year, is has been extremely weak. The offensive line is what's caused the problems for the quarterbacks. It's what's
Sure.
certainly caused the problems for our running backs, and it just hasn't been the thing you can rely on, unfortunately. So it's one of these things where going into the year, you thought the strengths were going to be in one area, they end up being in something different, and maybe they weren't prepared to exploit those differences. I don't know. I'm not in the
I kind of
coach's
think
booth,
that you see that a lot in college football, though. If you think
right,
about it, if you start looking at it whole, as a whole throughout a
right,
lot of programs, I think that there's a lot of similarities in that to Oklahoma. Coming
certainly,
into the season, you would have thought that Oklahoma, with everybody talking about the returning running backs in the running back
right,
room, that were supposed to be the strength of this football team, and they haven't been. The last couple of weeks, you've seen Gavin Sawchuk really step up and do his thing. But if you've up until that point, and all the way, up until the point when they lost the game to Kansas, it had been the receiver room, and of course Dillon Gabriel, that had really stepped up on the offensive side. So I think you do see
right,
that, and a lot of times they don't know how to kind of handle it. And when you're a program like BYU that prides itself in that continuity on the offensive line, being able to get a push and be able to protect your quarterback, which, this look, BYU is one of those forerunners in throwing the football.
right.
Going back to the Lavell Edwards days, and his offenses were just lighting up scoreboards. That was, I remember Ty Detmer and those guys just really, I mean, heck, Sark was unbelievable when
He
he was at
was, he
BYU.
was,
I mean,
he
it's
was
hard
a
for me to say
quarter.
nice things about Texas Longhorn coaches, but
He
but
was a
Sark was
quarter
unbelievable.
away in one game. He was a quarter away from going 15-0. The first team, by the way, to play 15 games to end the season
Yeah.
14-1. That was a
Wow.
fantastic team. And Sarkeesian, eh, his stature really didn't set him up for the NFL. But man,
Right.
he's got to be
He
in the
was a
top
competitor,
100 of
man. That
college.
dude was
Yeah,
a competitor.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
He was fantastic at BYU. Yep.
Hey, listen, and I've always been a San Francisco 49er fan, big fan of
There
Steve
you go
Young as
then.
well. So,
Yeah.
This is one of those things where, there's a lot of respect you have to have for those guys that have played that. And for, guys like, look, again, I'll say it again, that if you don't respect Kalani Sitake, you don't know college football very well, because that dude is definitely worth your time. Now, obviously, Keaton Slovis coming in, that was the expectation, was for him to kind of lead the thing around. It looks like, from what I can tell, you're going to end up with Retzlaff playing more maybe this week, but you're hearing that Slovis may be coming back. What if you could tell anybody that? What is it that you're hearing out of there? I mean, I know they're probably kind of keeping that under wraps, but what's been going on with the quarterback position?
So Aaron Roderick, the offensive coordinator, has been very clear that if Keaton is 100%, he would be the starter. He said it many times. And that's trackable. You can chase his quotes down. But it's one of these situations where, between you and I, if we're talking behind the popsicle stands, whatever, maybe they're sitting him down anyway, because his play had been going down a little bit. I don't know that for a fact. Again, he's been under siege. With the offensive line has not kept him upright. So Keaton Slovis probably not going to play unless Retzlaff gets hurt. In my opinion, I would rather see some of the underclassmen play. We have 2 or 3 underclassmen that have been sitting for a while that I would love to see them go out. And maybe the reason they're not out there is they turned out to not be very good. That if that's the case,
well, you don't want to throw them up against a Brent Venables defense either, though.
You don't. And so it's one of these situations where you'd like to get, some fresh blood, some time. Retzlaff is the future for next year, at least on paper.
Sure.
That's the reason that he would be starting.
Right. I can see that. Yeah. And as you said, now talk about defensively. I know that that's kind of been one of the things that you've got some guys that are pretty good that have. David Latu and some of these guys like that. Or is that how you say his name? Is it David Latu? Latu, yeah.
Yeah. I would just tell you, on the defense, it's been flipped over from the last 2 years in Provo. Last 2 years, the defense was really it just wasn't put together. It wasn't good. You bring in Jay Hill from Weber State, and the defense is completely flipped. While they're not getting a lot of tackles in the backfield, they are getting a lot of pressures, which is then given the opportunity for our defensive backs and safeties to make what has been an amazing amount of interceptions and turnovers. And they've done a really good job at that. I think even with the horror show that was the last 2 weeks, there's still plus in the plus minus. They might only be up 1 or 2. They were up almost 10 in turnover margin before the last few weeks. But it all comes down to the defensive line. If the BYU offense gives Oklahoma a bunch of short fields, the game's over. If by halftime the average starting position is 50-yard line or plus, because they just can't get the ball out of their own end zone, then I'll say, the rest of the game is going to be one-sided. So the defense has played well, but they've been put under a lot of pressure with just short fields, turnovers, and things like this, and then they get tired.
Right. So you've got, I'm showing here, you're a top 20 team as far as gaining turnovers in the country coming from that. So, that's one of the things that Oklahoma's done a really good job of. They've got 17 interceptions on the season, which is number one, or tied for number one in the country.
Is that right? I didn't realize that it was that high. Okay.
Yeah, they're tied with Liberty for number one on interceptions, and then they're just behind Bowling Green and Cal as far as turnovers gained.
I did not know that. One of my weaknesses is I don't remember stats and figures like that. So I appreciate you informing me. That's definitely something that's positive.
It isn't useful for really anything else like that, but my recall of statistical information
is actually
not bad. But it's it only works for this, since but I seem to remember things like these. And and it's really what's kind of mattered. And when you're an Oklahoma fan and have not seen real defense in Norman for the better part of 2 decades,
Right.
It's a welcome surprise. You're still seeing Oklahoma's defense not do have some lapses and make some mistakes and miss some tackles from time to time. But what you have seen is them in important times make big stops on the goal line or in certain situations. That's before. I mean, for everybody who's watched and didn't understand what was going on with USC this year, that's exactly, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you would have expected it, because this was what Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley were as a duo when it came to defense. That's not what's going on in Norman anymore either. And then you've got an offense that's out there putting up numbers as well. We talked a little bit before the show that they've had some sputter times too. I think that there's been some uneven play calling and some missed opportunities a lot. But the really it comes down to, more than anything else, probably 6 turnovers in 2 games that has kept this team from being 10-0 right now coming into this game. So which maybe that's a good thing that they're not, because maybe it would be a night game then if that was the case.
Yeah, that's what everybody here was hoping for, is that night game call up. And when everybody saw that it was a day, and not only a day, but like an early morning start, there was a lot of oohs and ahs around here, not in a good way. But I think
Oklahoma fans were probably happy about it because they were worried about it being a night game. But I think
that's rightfully so. I think there's reason for that. So if for no other reason, I would put Oklahoma on its front foot, just because it is an early game. BYU, by the way, though, for decades, and I'm talking.
I think you muted yourself.
Okay, I didn't do it. That did it on its own. The world's taken
no
over.
Worries. No worries. No worries.
Or something. All I was going to say is, for 40, 50 years, BYU has been travel anywhere to play football. That's the best ways. They weren't ducking, have never ducked anybody. Willing to play Florida State and Tallahassee, willing to play Oklahoma and Texas, travel anywhere. So having those early games, Eastern time zone games, is not something we're foreign to. But it is a challenge when you're used to when you're dealing with a team in Oklahoma that is keyed up and ready to go, and they are used to playing at noon Eastern.
I think that if you polled a lot of Oklahoma fans, that would be one of their major reasons for wanting out of the conference, out of the Big 12, is because of the Fox big noon games that they've been stuck in. They like to play night games too, and you've just haven't. Now, I think, as far as this season goes, there's been one night game, and I only think one other one that was after the 11 o'clock or noon time slot in Eastern time, which is 11 for out Central. So I think they've kind of gotten used to that as far as that's concerned. But it's definitely just this season. I think this team is used to it. The fan base, not so much. Not so much.
You guys next year are going to be on the hook for a lot of those games, Jason. So hopefully you start to change. The culture starts to wake up to those early time zone games, because you're going to be playing South Carolina. You're going to be playing Florida.
I think it'll be earlier, but I think you'll see a lot more of those 2:30 games or whatever.
I hope so. I'm an Oklahoma fan. You and I have talked about it many times. I've always loved OU, and I want nothing but success for your team.
We appreciate that. Yeah. So, just getting back into just what this BYU team is. What is it what do you think that they have to do in order to make this a competitive game?
They have to shorten the clock, shorten the time. The game needs to be a 45-minute game, not a 60-minute game. Best way you can do that is control the ground game, get some yards. I think they're averaging right around 100 yards of rushing. It's a ridiculously low number. They would have to control the clock and the time, and not give Oklahoma, say, 10 drives. If you can keep them to 7-8 drives because the game is shortened, I think BYU has a chance. And I say that honestly.
So forcing turnovers in and keeping your offensive on the field a little more.
That's the only way that they can stay competitive.
Yeah, I tend to believe that they'll find a way to do that though, because I just don't know. I don't know BYU to not. And again, I feel like with an opportunity to get bowl eligible, it feels like that's something
Right.
that Coach Sitake can kind of key on to really kind of help
Right.
to motivate this team to get another win. Now I would hope that that'll be next week against Okie Light.
And you know what? I like Oklahoma State as well. I don't have a dog in that hunt. I don't have a
I know
dog
you
in that
don't.
fight.
You don't
But
have to.
I'd love to put you and Cody in a
Yeah,
room, and have chain link around you and have you guys go at it in a funny
yeah.
way. But
We have fun with it. Yeah.
you know what? I just think of the two games,
Mhm.
this is the better of the two to get a win. It's not a
'Cause of
mark
being at
against
home.
Oklahoma, and it's not a mark for Oklahoma State. It's just one's a home game and one's an away game.
I don't, I understand that, and that makes perfect sense. Again, this is the game that I think that there's been a lot of OU fans and creators that have acted like this is not a game that scares them. I think that anybody who says that, anybody who has said that, it's kind of false bravado type of deal. I've said from this, we've talked about it a bunch. I have circled this one on this one and I've said if you were going to see one of the losses I could have seen coming into the season was going to be this game this week, because it's just a tough place to go play day or night, I think. And it's a program that you have to deal with their history too. That this is going to kind of similar to Oklahoma. You've got a history of being an unbelievable good program and having a lot of pride. They're not just going to roll over for anybody, even Oklahoma. So, I
think the game is going to definitely start off competitive.
Sure.
Jason, I think it's going to be, hopefully we can get to the third quarter and have it be, I would say because we've been behind all season
Right.
and still won. We got behind Arkansas by 14 in the first 3 minutes and won that game at Arkansas. We got behind.
That's what I was going to say. That game right there told me that BYU can pull out a win against the program. I mean, because talent-wise, there's no way you should have been on the field in the game on the road.
I agree with you. Yeah, their quarterback should have. I mean, the previous year, what
KJ
they put up, 47 points, and BYU scored 36, something like that.
Yeah.
We knew what we were going to get, but then we're playing in Arkansas, and you understand what that home field advantage in the Southeastern Conference is.
Surprised me. Yeah.
It was a rabid fan base. The alcohol was flowing, as it were.
Sure.
So for BYU to get that win earned massive respect across college football, and I think that respect is going to carry forward for years to come. The BYU is going to be, I think, going to be a competitive program moving forward.
Oh, I don't know that anybody who doubts BYU, I think, would be doing so at their own peril. I really do believe that because, again, you've got one of those coaches that can absolutely. He's got control of his program. His players love and respect him. The fan base loves and respects him. And I think that he's proven that he's a winner. So they're going to continue. I think that recruiting bump for getting into a Power 5 conference is going to continue to help them out. We talked a little bit about that pre-cast, but look, they're recruiting at a higher level than you've seen them do that in the past. I was looking at that tight end that they got out of he's from Laguna Beach, Reiner Swanson.
He is a stud, by the way. He is an absolute stud.
Yes, absolutely. He's going to be fun to watch.
Yes.
At 6'4", 240 already. He's not even in. He's
right.
Not even out of high school yet, and already he's playing. He's big boy football. So that's But you've seen some of these guys and they seem to still be doing very well in Utah recruiting, which is everybody knows. No matter how great your state may be, you got to kind of win that battle. You need to dominate your state. So you're seeing some of these guys like Therian Alexander, I think, coming from Georgia. That's a big get as well. But I
Oh,
also
sure.
was thinking about is it Devo Tuataga? Edge
I'm
rusher,
not sure. I'm
6'4",
not sure. I'm
6'4",
not sure,
240.
Jason.
That guy, I was watching some of his film the other day. He's a
Right.
stud too, and he's only showing up as a 3-star, but he's really, really good, man.
Well, and I
So
think what you're going to see, it's going to take years, as
yeah,
you know, and
absolutely.
everybody needs to be in for the ride, fully committed. BYU is way behind in NIL stuff, and I know
Okay.
that's not what this show was supposed to be about. Is some of these
That's
back
okay.
office type things.
Man, we just talk about whatever on my show.
I
You
know.
know that.
Okay, I do. I the point is that BYU's not only are they going to start to do much better in not only in-state but overall high school
Yeah.
recruiting. The thing that BYU really excels at, and I'm talking top 10, certainly top 15 every year, is going to be the transfer portal. And the reason is because the biggest, you and I know, the biggest downfall or challenge for BYU to recruit is the honor code at the
Yes.
school. It's
Yes.
just a challenge. You know, there's
Yeah.
some stuff in there that agree or disagree. It's just, you know, what the churches put out as a
Yeah.
value. They're going to stand behind, and that's because the football program doesn't run the religion.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
the recruiting when bringing in guys who are like in their last year, they're 4 or 5 year players that have been sitting and riding the bench in, say, Alabama, and need
Yeah.
a place where they can start today. BYU has excelled. They were in the top 12 this year in
Yeah.
transfer, and they weren't even officially in the league yet, and yet they had already gotten a top 12 transfer class out of the
Yeah, I
portal.
mean,
I
getting
think.
Caleb Etienne from Oklahoma State was a big get to
Well, it
be
was
able to go
supposed
in
to
and take
be.
this.
He hasn't played well,
I understand
but
that, but I mean, to go
but
in and pull a starter off of the
yes,
offensive
that's right.
line of a conference
Yeah,
opponent, a
yeah.
conference rival, that's big. And I think that obviously how they work out is how they work out. That's neither
Sure,
here
I
nor there.
agree with you though. What you're saying is exactly right.
But
Yes.
to me, I think that the schools like BYU are what the transfer portal is very good for. I would say the
Yes.
same thing for like Colorado right now in the
Yeah.
predicament that they're in, that they can't sit around and wait on a high school kid to develop. You
Right. They
know,
can't. You're right.
they don't have time for that. So I think that BYU is always going to lean on the way that it's done things with its high school recruiting, but I also think that when you can supplement some of those guys, that good football players that like you said, whatever reason they may or may not have had a chance to play at their last stop, or maybe they had an injury or something like that.
Right.
That's a big thing for them, right? I think that this is a big deal for them moving
Well,
forward.
and the reason it is such a big deal, there's actually a mechanical reason behind that, and that is when they bring in these players that are older and more experienced and want playing time, they're motivated. They're really motivated, hyper motivated to try to show off to get to the league. And the second thing is they're mature, so maybe some of the stuff that they might do as underclassmen,
Sure,
maybe going out early drinking, fooling
sure,
around with girls and some of these things. They've got a lot of that out of their system, and
yeah,
now they're more mature and they're like, I want to be in the NFL. And BYU does that extremely well. It's certainly with the exposure level they've had as an independent, and now going into a P5, now A4 conference. I tell you what, that has been amazingly strong, and I think it's only going to get stronger the more exposure they get. Because players want to be in the league, they want to be in the NFL, and we
sure.
have some great, Taysom Hill is a BYU guy. Yeah, Zach Wilson is a
That's right.
BYU guy, but
Zach
they're
Wilson.
starting in the NFL.
Yeah.
They're making millions of dollars. The list goes on and on.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think right now we have 19 players on
I was just
active
gonna say they're
53.
scattered around the league all the time. They always
They
have
are.
been. They
Yeah,
always have been.
Jaron Hall
Mhm.
in Minnesota got
Yep.
it and then lost the job with a concussion that first drive of his. But he was 8 for 9
Yeah.
and they were down at like 5 yard line on his first drive. So,
Mhm.
it's one of these situations. The bigger BYU gets, the more exposure, which is something funny to say, but the more exposure they're already getting quite a bit
Sure.
that BYU gets, the more popular they're going to become.
Hey, we I know we got to get you out of here, but let's give me a score prediction on the game and tell everybody how to find you after you do that, so that we can make sure anybody who's not already a subscriber to the Big 12 Mafia show, they always do the Holy Rivals as well. I know there's going to be some changes to that as well, but tell everybody how to find you and give me a score prediction.
Sure. So the score prediction, I think the point spread is either 24 or 28, which is
Wow,
a lot.
wow.
I'm going to say BYU covers,
Okay.
and Oklahoma wins something like 42-24. I think they're going to get more offense this game. They're going to make some changes. Obviously, I'm probably going to be wrong, but I do think that's
That's not
generally
too
going to
far
be
off
the
of what
pro.
I was looking at. I was
Okay.
thinking, yeah, I mean, and I'm a little more leery about the game just because of the fact that it is in Provo, and
Right.
you know, you've had some uneven games for Oklahoma. So until you see them start off like you saw them at home
Right.
last weekend, you're a little worried about it. There are 2 losses being on the road as well. But yeah, my expectation of this would probably be, I was thinking like, 35-17, maybe 35-21, somewhere in that area too. So
I could
somewhere,
see a 42-17. I could see a
yeah.
42-17 pop up just because it's round numbers.
Okay.
But Oklahoma's going to win this game. It's okay. BYU just needs to go out and do everything they can to continue to grow as a program. Maybe take
Yeah.
some chances with some younger players to see what they can do. We got 2 games
Sure.
here. If we don't make the bowl game, we miss out on those practices, which is
The
huge.
practices is the
You and
big
I both
problem.
know how
Yeah,
important that is. It's
absolutely.
not about the bowl game; it's about the practices that they get to do.
Absolutely.
So, anyways, outside of that, to find me, I'm at B12 Mafia. So B12 like the vitamin Mafia on
Mhm.
Twitter, at the Holy Rivals on Twitter, and then on please, and if not only follow me, but turn on your notifications for both of those links inside of Twitter. It's really important to follow us. You need to turn on those notifications on Twitter. Most people don't even know you can do that. There's a little bell
Yeah.
next to
Yeah.
the follow
Sure.
button, and hit it. And anyways, and then become a subscriber to the Big 12 Mafia show. Just put in Big 12 Mafia on YouTube, or the Holy Rivals on YouTube, and watch our YouTube shows. I think I've been told they're mildly interesting, and I think we do a pretty good job of being fair and covering college athletics. Sometimes I dip into the NFL, but yeah, Jason, I really appreciate you being here. Are you going to come on and pick the games with us?
I will. Yeah, actually, I've got time to do that. So just if you want to shoot that link over, I'll be on there for you. Yeah, absolutely. I love coming on that show. It's fun. It's
Okay,
always a lot of
it's
fun.
going to be. Listen, thank you so much for having me on. We got to do this more.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I appreciate you coming on, telling us a little bit more about this team. I still a little nervous about this game, hoping that Oklahoma can get back into and stay in contention for this Big 12 championship
I
game.
hope you should be nervous.
Concerns me. Yeah.
I want you on pins and needles all the way through the third quarter. That's what I want.
Believe me, man, it's always pins and needles when Oklahoma plays.
You know what we should do is you and I should joint broadcast us watching it live, and so people can see. I've never done that before. I'm kind of saying it in jest, but watching you and I watching live, I can't do it for this game because I'm going to be at the game. But in the future, we'll have to come up with something like that. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, and hey, tell your dad a happy birthday, and you guys enjoy the game, man. I'm excited for you guys to get out there and check it out. And yeah, see you guys this evening on the show. Hey, again, folks, make sure that you get over there, check out the Big 12 Mafia. They have, when it comes to conference realignment and covering both BYU and Utah, and really, everything that has to do with the Big 12. There's not really a better channel out there, period, if you want a full circle of information. So make sure you get over there, subscribe to their channel, and follow Bomber on Twitter too, because he's always got some cool takes going on out there. So thanks again, Bomber, for coming in. Folks, make sure that you have wiped your feet. Hit that like button, share this with your friends. Again, Oklahoma playing the early game. It's at 12 Eastern time, so 10 local time there in Utah against the BYU Cougars. We will see you guys on. We will be on right after the game. Chris Griffin and myself from the Horns Down podcast will do within an hour of the game ending. We will have our post game reaction show, and then be sure to look for me also on Fan Addicts Saturday night snap count as well. I'm gonna get to be on Big 12 Mafia's Pick'em show here this evening, so make sure you get over there and check that one out as well. We'll see you.
Thanks a lot, Jason. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good one.